What's up, friends and family? Welcome back to the channel. I'm Steve Lewis, the host of Let's Talk HERPs. Today I want to talk about something that's been on my mind for quite a while. I want to talk about heat mats. What are heat mats or under tank heaters, and how do they work? I'm also going to tell you about what people like about heat mats, what are some risks from heat mats, what are some myths about heat mats, and then we'll get to how to properly use them. Okay, I promise we'll get back right to talking about heat mats. This is Maisie. She's my little patternless Colombian rainbow boa. And the only reason she's in this video is because I've learned that if I don't start showing a snake within the first minute and a half or so of these videos, then you guys don't watch the whole thing. Stick around. I'm going to have other little clips, but let's get back to heat mats. First, let's jump into 3 different types of heat mats that you're going to commonly find in the store. Starting with what I think are some of the more commonly available, but maybe not the best option. In fact, I'll say it's the worst option. We'll start there. So the first item is this heat mat right here, or under tank heater. And this is your very standard under tank heater, and the technology that you see, with the exception of this button right here, is going to work the same as the other 2 versions as well. And it's real straightforward. I'm not going to get into the full electromagnetic spectrum in this video. I did another video on heat and light. I'll put links in those in the description, but this is just about heat mats. That electricity terminates in this heating element right here. And when it does that, it generates heat. This item is 14 watts. And the heat that this generates is going to be appropriate to that, right? So it's not going to get ridiculously hot. However, it does get hot enough to melt plastic if left unchecked, so we'll get into that in a little bit. Why I don't love this type of heat mat, this is just some brand I got off Amazon where it comes with a dimmer, is it comes with a dimming switch. And it's just this little knob here, so I guess it's not a switch, but a dimming dial. You'll see these marketed as rheostats as well. That's just a more mechanical electrical term. But what the dimmer does is it changes the amount of electricity that makes it to the heat source at the end. And when it does that, it obviously reduces the amount of heat that it produces. That's fine. You can make that work, especially if you have an element like this, which you should. Infrared temp gun. You get them for about 15 to 20 bucks at Home Depot. And absolutely worth it. You could check it because you're not going to set it to a specific temperature, but it's going to stay consistent. So instead of using a thermostat to set it to, say, 88 degrees for a hot spot, you would just set it somewhere in the middle and measure temps and go higher or lower to get it to where you want accordingly. I don't love that because it doesn't take into account any fluctuations for room temperatures. Also, it's a lot of meddling. You'll see later on in the video, one of the things I like best about heat mats are their simplicity. And adding a thermostat, or excuse me, a rheostat and a dimmer and measuring it with the temp gun all the time, it's not the definition of simple to me. It works in a pinch, and it'll work in all the same ways we'll describe later in the video. It's just not my favorite. Now, this second mat is probably the most commonly seen in pet stores. It's the under tank heater. This one's from Zoomed. They're a good brand. Nothing for or against them. It's not an endorsement. But a couple things that I do love about the big brands, they do have that UL safety rating. So sometimes some of the things you order off Amazon are not safety rated. Just be mindful of what you purchase and be smart about that. This heat mat works exactly in the same way. They market this as an under tank heater. As you can see, there's no dimming switch on it whatsoever, so it'll get up to maximum temps of about 120 degrees. Now, they can get hotter through a process called thermal blocking, which I'll explain briefly later. But this is going to work just like the other heat mat I showed you earlier. The power terminates in this 16-watt heat mat. The thing about these that is kind of a neat feature is it's sticky on one side. So you peel a protective backing off of it, and you could stick it to the bottom of your aquarium tank. So this is really intended for those tanks that you're going to get in the pet store, because most PVC enclosures don't have a foot at the bottom. And the problem with these is that the connector to the heating element, to the plug, is elevated there. So you need, when you stick it under the tank, you need to have some space underneath that so it doesn't put all the weight of the enclosure on top of that heat mat. Otherwise you could cause breakage and damage. So it requires specific aquariums. It's also not great because the sticky tape underneath it, or on the backing, not tape, but the adhesive, It's really only good once. I've used it just a couple times, and it doesn't. It's tacky, but it's not sticky, and it will certainly not hang under a tank for a long time. I found after a few years of keeping it and trying a few different methods that there's really only one type of heat tape that I really think is ideal, and I'll explain that. So this specific little short piece, this is 4 watt. You'll see it sold in under different brands, Flex Tape. This is THG Heat. Redline, I believe, makes it now. You can buy these online at the big reptile vendors. But this works exactly the same way. Electricity goes in, straight to the heating element. The difference is, as you can see, it's a lot more stripped down. It doesn't have any packaging on it. It's not sold in any silicone or rubber sleeves. You know, it doesn't have expensive packaging, and you pay for that. Whereas I don't have the prices in front of me, the ZooMed mat, something like 25 bucks. You'll pay just a few dollars for this and about 15 for the cord and the connection. So you could really save. And if you're doing it for multiple snakes or for bigger areas, you could really save when you're talking about the pet stores selling heat mats for 45, 55 bucks, that sort of thing. But it's a little basic. So when you use something like this, you're also going to want to use something to insulate the back of it. I highly recommend that. And to be honest, I recommend insulating the back of the heat mat with any of the heat products. The one sold in the pet store is probably going to be your safest to use without it. But otherwise, you never know. Just in case there's a failure, protect whatever the heat mat's on. So you put this on the back, and you tape it down using this. Reflective tape, aluminum foil tape, HVAC tape. This is highly adhesive. It's got a great stick, and it holds up to high temps really well. So why don't people like heat mats? There's a bit of a stigma around heat mats. And one of the first things that you'll hear is heat in nature comes from the sun. It comes from above, not from below. Thank you, Captain Obvious. Yes, it does. So sunlight is obviously above us. We don't get heated by the sun from below. So if your goal is to replicate sunlight, then absolutely you cannot do that with a heat mat. It's not going to represent light in any way. So when electricity terminates at the end of a tungsten bulb, that's going to generate so much energy that it puts out light, and that's what a light bulb is. When electricity generates through a heat mat, it doesn't get that. It spreads it out over a much broader surface. That energy just dissipates as heat. It doesn't get bright at all. So the counter argument to all that, right, is step outside, put your hand on the ground, and it's hot. And that is not necessarily going to be replicated by the lights from above. Well, what you'll hear in some of the more advanced circles, but it's by folks who maybe don't understand all of it, is that the light bulbs in your cage will heat down on heavy objects like rock, slate, tile, concrete, ceramics, heavy objects that absorb that energy from the light, and then they will dissipate the heat slowly throughout the evening once the lamps turn off. While that's absolutely true, I just always want to point out that the energy that comes down from the sun is way more intense than the energy from the lamps. And not only that, but the amount of weight. I have some slate tiles, absolutely, and I use this and I try and capitalize on the slate. I love broken ceramic pots, don't get me wrong. But it is not a replacement for a 2,000-pound boulder or a 20-mile strip of open road. And just, you know, how many millions of miles of earth beneath us. So the weight difference, the thermal mass and the thermal energy, it's nowhere near the same. So when those rocks are dissipating heat, it's not dissipating heat throughout the night. It's shutting off very early, as opposed to you go out to the desert in the middle of the night. Warm night, if it's 70 degrees outside, the road's going to be in the 80s. Honestly, probably till the morning. I don't know if it's ever going to cool off. It's going to be 125 at 9 o'clock at night, and it's going to take hours and hours to cool off. It just doesn't have, that's a bit of an exaggeration, by the way. But that doesn't even come close to that inside the aquarium. Another important thing to discuss are the risks of heat mats. Every heat element has its risks. Heat mats are, of course, no exception. The good news is the risks of heat mats are almost entirely preventable. Some things you can't prevent, like surges and power failures and that sort of thing. Acts of God, as they call it, right? Natural disasters. But barring those, everything else you can prevent. First off, never place a heat mat or under tank heater inside of the cage. It's there right there in the name. It's an under tank heater, not an in the tank heater. Okay, so that's step one. Never place the heat mat inside of the cage. This for a few reasons. One, it's going to get moved around. It's going to be put into a place that is not the original intention. And if you tape it down, you risk the chance of that tape dislodging and getting stuck to your snake's scales. So never ever put tape inside your enclosure, never put the heat mat inside the enclosure. Furthermore, water from the water dish or urine from your snake can really cause damage, cause a short, could cause a fire. So just do not ever put it inside of the cage. There's a few companies that sell protected sleeves that insert inside that. I'm not talking about that. If you're designing that kind of cage, okay. But otherwise, never, ever, ever put an under tank heater or a heat mat inside of the enclosure. Second, never place a probe inside of the enclosure. So if you are using a thermostat to control the heat mat, which you should be, never, ever put the probe inside of the tank. The reason why you don't want to do this is because it's going to sit down and you're thinking, perfect, I'm going to set it right where the snake sits. And that's going to be the exact temp. Well, the snake's going to get there and it's just going to move the probe out of the way. And if the probe is sitting off here, but the heat mat's over here, its temperature is not going to change. So the thermostat's just going to keep pumping electricity and you're going to get the full power of that heat mat. And when that happens, it allows for a much higher degree of heat to be generated. And you definitely run the risk of burns. So any of those things, putting the mat inside the enclosure, putting the probe inside the enclosure, they run the risk of thermal blocking. Lastly, since it's been mentioned every time, not using a thermostat is a really bad idea. Listen, if you made it this far, I want to thank you and spend a time to just scroll real quick these patrons. So they've been with me since damn near the beginning. A couple of you have been right there since the beginning, and thank you so much for sticking around. It means everything to me. There's a link in the description if you wanted to join as well. It's a fun little community, and it's free to join. If you feel like it, most of us keep in touch on Facebook Messenger and some of the other groups that we're in together, but we also have a Discord, and it's a lot of fun. Also, and if you get a chance, hit the like and subscribe button. It really helps me out. I do this channel just for fun. It was an opportunity for me to talk to people a lot smarter than I am about snakes and help spread that information out and just kind of answer sort of commonly asked questions in a video format. So hitting like and subscribe helps the channel grow and helps get the message out. Really appreciate it. If these heaters are so bad, why are they so popular? Why are they sold throughout so many stores? Why do we see so many people recommend them online? 2 words, belly heat. That's a phrase only reptile keepers think of as normal. What other community has belly heat as a thing? Oh wait, if you have a good one, put it in the comments. But what does that mean? If you haven't heard it, if you're into reptiles and you haven't heard that phrase, it's a phrase referred to exactly that, heat from the ground. Snakes have their belly on the ground, and therefore heat from the ground is belly heat. But there are so many myths surrounding belly heat. My favorite is snakes can't digest food without belly heat, which again, it's this word belly heat, which is not scientific. You know, I'm making a scientific statement like they can't digest their food without belly heat. They can't digest their food without belly heat. I've heard that snakes only feel heat on their belly and therefore they can't thermoregulate if they don't know if the heat is coming from above because they couldn't feel, you know, where's warm and where's cold. And then I've also heard that they only feel heat on their backs and you put it on belly heat, otherwise they'll burn their backs. It's a stretch, but basically people don't know. I'll tell you one of the reasons why they were so popular. They're simple. They're super simple. We understand them. You plug it in the wall, it gets hot, you put it on a thermostat and you can control the temperature, you're done. That's it. It's the easiest thing in the world to utilize. And that's a good thing. It means it's affordable. It means it's readily available. They don't take up much space. And you can have them on hand in case of emergencies. So heat mats and heat tape and under tank heaters, they've been around for a long time. However, a lot of the reasons people give want to make it sound like it's all about the snake. It's all for the snake. These are snake reasons. It's about snake keeper reasons, consumer reasons, and that's important. We have to take into effect who's keeping the snakes and how we can do it properly and affordably, because a lot of times that increases their welfare too if we can afford it. So that's not a bad thing. It's okay to say this is the most convenient option, and that's why I like it. If you check out the lighting and the heating videos I do, you'll see that it's not appropriate as a sole source of heat, okay? So the myth about snakes needing belly heat to digest their food it's just not accurate, okay? So if that were true, a heat mat wouldn't be the only way to get it. Because in fact, if you do put a rock down under a lamp, it is going to be much warmer than the air temperature above it. So you're creating belly heat with your lamps inside the cage. It's actually quite that simple. So while it may not last all night, as I discussed earlier, you're still creating that belly. The infrared heat that comes from lamps, it actually penetrates deeper into the snake and warms it from within, as opposed to the surface to surface heat, which takes much longer, needs the blood flow through the skin cells to help circulate that heat through their body, which is good to do through their belly. So again, even though it's crazy to say things like belly heat, snake keepers are onto something. The old schools have been doing it for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. There's a reason why they've been doing it for 50 years, okay? We can learn from it, we can advance, but it's crazy to just outright reject heat mats as bad technology or unusable technology. When used as a sole source of permanent heat, I would agree that it is way underperforming for your snake. You're doing the bare minimum to keep them alive. This video is just about heat mats, so we're not going to get too much into the electromagnetic spectrum, but you can absolutely, and you absolutely should, consider overhead heating. I particularly love the Reptile Systems Halogen IR Gold system. So how do you properly use a heat mat?
Your first step is going to be using the HVAC tape. Tape down your heat tape to the insulation. Now I'm doing it right in the middle so you can see what I'm doing, but you want to be more strategic when you place yours. Usually heat side goes to one end of the tub. Next, you place the probe right in the middle of the heat tape, and using electrical tape, secure the probe to the heat tape. Next, you will align the tape on the bottom of the enclosure, and using the HVAC tape, go ahead and attach and secure your heat tape in place on all four sides of the bin. Now that that's over, you can go ahead and plug that heat mat into the thermostat. One thing I wanted to mention earlier, when you're taping that thermostat probe down, put it on the same side as the cords that come out of the heat mat. It'll make it much more convenient. And that's it. That's how you set it up.
And this is good for a temporary enclosure. Let's say you did the thing you're not supposed to do and you did an impulse buy. Well, no worries, because you also have a few extra tubs, you have substrate at home, and you have some heat mats. You can set up an enclosure for that animal that's going to survive through the night, through the weekend, through the next couple of weeks while you order items, go to the stores that you need, hardware store, whatever it is that you got to do, so you build a full-time permanent enclosure for that animal. Or let's say you have a hatchling. A lot of times hatchlings or neonate snakes don't want to eat in a full-size enclosure. It's not uncommon to use shoebox size totes for baby snakes. It's actually quite a perfect fit for them. Most of them aren't even the length of the length there, so they fit within it. They feel nice and secure in there, and it's actually a huge important step for feeding baby snakes is making them feel secure. Husbandry has to be right, but security is huge. Like Clint says, if you're a noodle with the head, the world is terrifying. And if you're terrified, they don't want to eat. So in some cases, you need a small tub. It can be hard. I have these set up to put a lamp above them, not directly on it. It's too small for that. But in most cases, these are far too small. It's too much DIY. There's way too much effort to turn these into something you can heat from above. The lamps are just too powerful. but a 4-watt heat tape is perfect. Put that along just the side. It's small, it's convenient, and it fits the small cage. The animal's not going to be in it forever. It just needs to be in it until it's big enough and confident enough that it can handle a larger environment. After that, it's off to the races. The key is it's always temporary. Heat mats are wonderful temporary heat elements. So you remember earlier I was kind of laughing about how keepers will say that if you put a rock underneath the lamp, it's going to heat up and release that heat all night. Well, what you do is you make a shallow area where the substrate's real low, and with your under tank heater, you can place that underneath the tank. It'll heat the ground up, and your snake now has an area that's going to have heat day and night. Keep it on your hot side. But now this is something that you could switch on. Maybe you switch it on at night. Maybe you leave it on all day. It doesn't matter. It's on a thermostat. It's going to control itself. But you could set the temp, and again, you could double check the temperatures above it. So if you put heat element, bottom of the cage, maybe some gravel or sand or aspen shavings or whatever it is that you're using, bioactive substrate, you could just have the drainage layer, whatever it is, you could get creative with it. And there you would have the heat element, the heat tape, set to the thermostat, and it's like the snake's coming out on the road. Any day of night he wants, any time of night he wants, he could get 80-degree temps. So if you have a snake that has that kind of behavior, that kind of nocturnal behavior, you might want to consider some sort of nighttime heat there on the ground. You could also put it in between items. Again, this goes against my never put it in the cage. There are specific items designed for it. Certain sleeves will protect it from moisture and elements, and you could actually get really creative too. So that's it. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed learning something about heat mats. If you've got any other ways to use it that I didn't consider in this, go ahead and leave the comment about that. And thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. All right, so first off, let's get right into it. What are heat mats? You know the answer. Go ahead and comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks. Maybe a little more. This just heats up this element right here. To be honest with you, I don't know the material of it. I'm sure Thomas Griffiths does. And you'll see later on in the video, one of the things I think is best about heat mats is their simplicity. I say heat mats. Where's my brain? But the after that, there you go. After that, okay.